Fantastic. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are, whenever you are, whoever you are. Welcome, because this is an exciting time. This is the first, the inaugural, the numero uno of WIP's Meet the Academic. And today's actually especially special, not just because it's the first one, but because WIP was started 10 years ago. And the person that we're going to be interviewing today, Dr. Tully Barnett, actually happened to be the person, one of the people who started WIP. So let's just quickly run through. Tully, I think you could give us a little bit of insight into what WIP is, what it does, why it was started.
So great, thank you for this opportunity to have a chat. Just to introduce WIP a little bit, we started it 10 years ago when I was a postgraduate student here at Flinders, and there was no opportunity for postgraduate students to get together and have a self-directed, easy experience of presenting at a conference location. So we wanted something that was controlled by us postgraduate students. We wanted to have a low stakes first go at a conference presentation and to do it in this kind of supportive environment. So we started WIP, which is a works in progress kind of event, but we added the H to make it both the whip that you crack to motivate you, and then we made that stand for honestly, so it's works honestly in progress.
Fantastic. And whether or not there was actually a prop 10 years ago, we do now have a nice kind of red whip that...
we had a whip, it went missing. If it's red, maybe it's the same one that has been resurrected. We had a whip. I won't tell you where we bought the whip from. You can use your imagination.
Yeah, someone took it home and then returned it
come back.
10 years ago, 10 years later. Fantastic. So that's a little bit about WIP. Now, the purpose of these sort of Meet the Academics is WIP now are kind of wanting to run some workshops as well for postgrads. So for sort of postgrads in the humanities area, but we are sort of open to all of those postgrads in the new college, the College of Humanities, Arts and Social Sciences. But we think it's important that the academics who are running the workshops also are able to introduce themselves a little bit to the folks who might not be on campus, who might not always get to see the academics in the corridor. So that's what these things are about. So let's just kick it off, Tully. A little bit about you, and let's cast our mind back to all those years ago when you were but a little sprout. We'd love to know what it was that got you interested on the pathway to becoming an academic.
Great. Well, yes, so I started out doing a literary studies PhD here, and I suppose that I went for the PhD because I felt in my honours year that I'd really found my voice and found my passion, and I really wanted to have the chance to pursue that on that larger scale that the PhD operates. I knew that the job market was complicated, but I wanted to do it for its own kind of intrinsic benefits, that is the process of expanding the mind. And I felt during the PhD that I really did felt that I was laying down new pathways in the brain, new neural networks, and I thought that was really exciting. And so I did a PhD here looking at representations of information technology in literary fiction. It was a great topic to do. I loved my topic all the way to the end, which actually made it a bit hard to finish in the end, because when you love it so much you never want to let it go. So I had to kind of rein that in a little bit at the end there. I was very expansive. I wanted to talk about every book ever under the sun, but then I had to get serious and rein it in and make it achievable, which I did in the end. So that's the PhD that I did.
Fantastic. And thinking about your research interests now, what are the sort of things that you're kind of thinking about, looking at? Because there might be some postgrads out there that think, oh, that's an idea that I want to connect to.
Well, I kept being really interested in that kind of, representations of information technology in literary fiction, and I took that towards what was then the fledgling digital humanities community in Australia. It had been a big deal, internationally, but it was just getting off the ground then in Australia, so I became part of that network, and then started to think about, literature and technology, and then I got involved in a reading project here that was aimed at understanding how reading works for students in the undergraduate literary studies classroom, and that really got me obsessed with the notion of reading. So now one of my very strong research strengths or aims areas is looking at how reading operates in the digital age, and in particular what digitisation can be understood as in terms of being a cultural practice as well as a technical function. So I'm looking at Google Books and the Hartley Trust and Trove and all of those kinds of digitisation of the literary object. But at the same time, I got very strongly involved in a project that was getting off the ground here called Laboratory Adelaide, The Value of Culture, with Strategic Professor of Creative Arts Julian Merrick and Professor Robert Fidian. And we were looking at helping arts organisations in the community to talk about the value of what they do in terms other than the economic or other than metrics. And so that turned into an ARC grant, a linkage grant, and I got a postdoc on that grant. And then just a year ago now, I have converted that into a continuing position, balanced position here at Flinders, and I'm a CI on the second linkage project that has just been awarded funding this year.
Fantastic. And of course, to spruik one of the products of that particular project, that book is out now, Why Culture Matters, is that
it's called What Matters?
What
Talking
Matters.
Value in Australian Culture, published by Monash University Press just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and it's flying off the shelves,
It's
apparently,
doing good.
so get it before it's
We've hit the vein, yeah.
fantastic. Well, I mean, there sounds like there's clearly quite a few different sort of research interests that are intersecting there in different ways. Would you say that for a postgrad who's wanting to transition to becoming an early career academic, that being versatile, being agile, to use that word, with their research interests and what they're actually kind of doing a little bit of, is that important?
Absolutely right. So I think that in the humanities in particular, a really important part of that PhD project is independent research, and that's absolutely true. You've got to get a really strong foundation in being an independent sole researcher. But at the same time, funding projects, opportunities in the world come through collaboration for the most part, and so getting experience with those broader research collaborations is just absolutely crucial. And so I think that that's why participating in things like WIP, participating in any of these opportunities that come our way, conferences, having conversations, opening up the boundaries and borders between disciplines and between sole researchers as well, is where the opportunities are to grow research together that creates opportunities for jobs and project funding for individual researchers.
Yeah, fantastic. So I think that's perhaps we could segue into this in terms of further advice for HTR students, and maybe we could talk a little bit more on this. So if we're thinking about someone who's in their first year, and we're also thinking about someone maybe who is entering into their final 6 months, would you say that it's useful across the whole life of that postgraduate sort of adventure that they are thinking always about those collaborations and things like that?
Yeah. While shoring up their own individual sole research, because that's where you learn how to do the research, but yeah, always thinking about those opportunities for collaboration and giving them a go. Being a bit of a promiscuous researcher, having your kind of relationships out there, putting your goals and on your sleeve so that you can attract those kind of different researchers to your project and to your enthusiasm. And I think that part of that is having a research plan. So research plans don't always come off. They don't always come to fruition in every way that you expect them to. But if you've got that eye on that third year and beyond, even as you start, then you're able to take advantage of a lot of those opportunities that come your way.
Fantastic. So a research plan maybe is something that could mitigate, I suppose, some of the challenges. So I do want to ask you, for you personally, maybe what 3 biggest challenges that you felt in that transition from being a PhD student to becoming an early career researcher?
So certainly navigating the job market is a challenge, and also navigating your own feelings about the job market. So there's always that indecision and always worry about the road not taken and which one is going to lead to where you most strongly want to go. And then within that is also your identity as a researcher. What kind of researcher are you and do you want to be? And so I think one worrying about whether this is the right thing to be doing at this time, or if I should always be trying to do something else, is a challenge. But I think you've just got to back yourself and make your decisions on the basis of good thinking, good critical thinking, and then just go with it and don't stress too much about that road not taken. And always just knowing that that there are future opportunities out there. So making decisions that are leading towards something, and even if the thing that you're leading towards isn't quite where you land, often other doors open up, and embrace them wholeheartedly, I say.
Fantastic.
Another challenge, I think, is imposter syndrome, right? So that is something that I think, a lot of people go through in the PhD era, but I think that it comes back and bites you again at different parts of your whole career. So that transition to a continuing position is one that's fraught with these worries about imposter syndrome. I just say, everybody experiences it. If everybody experiences it, except perhaps, complete narcissists, if everyone experiences it, then it's part of the process, and that your experiencing of it is appropriate to the position that you're in, and don't worry about it, just go for it, even if you're feeling nervous about it.
Not to destroy the illusion of this space here, but Tara, Tara Brabazon, who's standing behind the camera, even she probably suffers from some imposter syndrome sometimes.
I think everybody does.
She's saying no. No worries. Okay, cool. Well, let's have a quick little think about then, because I am really interested, because I think the way, life after doing the dissertation, that doing the PhD, suddenly you're thrust out there with, and it's competitive, and everyone else is, but they've got a degree as well. So there is a sense that you've got to do extracurricular things that are going to kind of strengthen your position after that. Was that something that you were always thinking about, and also during the PhD, and also how did you handle that balance?
Yeah, so I think there's a point where you're really deeply invested in the research project that you're doing, and that you almost can't see beyond the boundaries of that project, but you've got to reach out beyond that. And so finding the right venues for that reaching out, I think, is a challenge and an important one. So and it's about finding like-minded people, and it's through those like-minded people that you get to to really pursue the collaborations that are going to lead to those extracurricular projects that have payoff for a long-term research career. Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, let's have a little think about, so Tully is going to be running a workshop, that'll be on the 20th of September. You might be watching this well into the future, and so you'll go, damn it, I should have gone. But for those people who are watching this before the workshop, let's just sort of clue us in a little bit to what we're going to be thinking about. It's going to be on DECRA grant writing, I believe.
Yes,
and
correct.
Also the things that we need to be thinking about to prepare ourselves for that sort of thing. So let's just start off. What is a DECRA grant?
A DECRA grant, very good question, is a Discovery Early Career Researcher Award. It is one of the Australian Research Council's regular grant offerings that is particularly directed towards early career researchers. So they're not competing against professors, but are competing with people who who are at a similar stage in their career. And so that is defined as 5 years post PhD with some career interruption taken into account.
Cool. And so why is it worth considering?
I think it's very important to consider to apply for a DECRA for many reasons. So on the face of it, it's not so much about getting the award, because a DECRA is very highly competitive, and statistically there's not a lot of chances of success in that field. But as I say, someone's going to get it, so it may as well be you. And there are things that we can do to make ourselves more likely to get that award. But I think that the thing to really focus on is the other benefits, the spillover effects, the extra benefits for writing that grant are beyond the chance for success of getting the grant. So first of all, to say that a DECRA grant gives you a 3-year salary attached to a university, and so that means that you can do 3 years of research only, or research or 4 years if you add in a small teaching component as well. And so that's very attractive, both in terms of securing that first job after a PhD, but also in terms of then being able to really solidify yourself as a researcher, in that early part of the career where so many other demands are on our time. So that in itself is very attractive. But as I say, I found in applying, so I've applied twice. twice, once and I didn't get it, and the second one is under consideration now, and I presume that I won't get it, but that's why I can speak so strongly about those extra benefits for doing the grant. Those benefits include really getting to know yourself as a researcher. So you have to pin down your research plan for the next few years. And so once I was forced to really sit down and decide where I was going to go with my research projects now, given that I did a PhD in literary studies, given that I teach in creative arts as well as literary studies, given that I'm working on a on a linkage project that's around the value of arts and culture, that's a really interdisciplinary project, I had to spend some time focusing on what I was going to do now for the foreseeable future. And so writing this grant really made me do that. But on top of that, it also helped me build networks that I'm still benefiting from. So one of the things that's really useful to have in a DECRA application is a advisory board or consultative group or something like that. And that forces you to just pick up the phone and call the person at the National Library of Australia and say, hey, I'm doing this research. Are you interested in being involved in some way? And so it can be a really low stakes way. You can say, would you just like to read it? Would you just like to, offer some feedback on these questions? Or would you, it doesn't have to be a high stakes level of involvement. It's just about starting the relationships. And that has had profound and ongoing effects, even though I was so nervous to do it at the start. And I really put it off to the last minute because I thought, they're not going to want to hear from me. They don't care. But, what I learned was people really do want to engage. And so if you're just making contact and just starting a conversation, that's not going to be turned away.
Fantastic. Well, we might leave it there so,
Yes.
so as not to give too many secrets away about our upcoming workshop. Dr. Tully Barnett, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you as well to Tara Brabazon and OGR for lending us this room, lending us this cardboard cutouts, these little things here, Daleks. Beautiful. So, look, that's all for this episode of the first episode of WIP's Meet the Academic. Thank you very much. Just have a good life. See you later.